Last one. Okay, so here we have a word problem. Remember, there are two things that you should do, or maybe three things. I don't remember. Let's see. So there are a few things that you're supposed to do when you have a word problem. Oh, just two. I remember now. So the first thing that you want to do is just label your unknowns. Remember, we're working with, in this case, we have a quadratic formula. We're working with x and y's, right? So our expression here is actually our function. Remember, your function is usually written as f of x, right? But instead of f of x, our x is really a t. Remember, your x is your input, and those are values that we're plugging into the equation. So here we can say f of t is equal to this expression right here, okay? So for step one, our goal is to label. So essentially, my y is f of t. That's a fancy way of saying f of t. Instead of f, honestly, in this problem, it says the height of the bolt after t seconds is given by this. So instead of in f, honestly, I would change this to an h so you can follow it a little bit better. So now, y is the same thing as h of t, and writing that in words would just be height, okay? And then x, for us, remember it used to say f of x, now it says h of t is actually just t, and t is seconds, okay? And number two is to figure out what we're looking for, okay? So it says find the height. So we are looking for height, which is really h of t, which is y, which means they had to given us information on x. So we take our equation, and all we have to do is plug in x, which is actually t. So they told us that t is equal to 2. So we take this problem and we plug in 2. You should be able to plug this straight into your calculator and get 4,560. And this is feet, because it tells you right here what the units are. Perfect, okay? So for B, it says find the height again, and they tell us that t is 5. So we do the exact same thing. We just plug in 5 instead of 2. Plug that whole thing right here into your calculator, and you should get 4,224, and again, our units are feet, okay? So for number 17, our goal is to round to the nearest whole second if we need to, okay? And it says estimate when the bolt hits the ground. So step one was to label, we did that. Step two is to figure out what it's asking us to find. It says estimate the nearest whole second. So we're actually looking for t, or we're looking for our x, makes sense? Which means we have information about our height. So it hits the ground when our y, or our h of t, is equal to 0, right? Because the height would be 0. So now we take this equation, and now instead of h of t, which is our height, we're going to write 0. And then we can solve it just like we've been solving before. Before you go any further, I would first check to see if you can pull out a greatest common factor. So I would do the 4, 6, 2, 4, and see if you can divide that by 16. And let's see what happens. And we can, so that's a great sign. Yeah, actually, even better, we could take that instead of factoring out. We could rewrite that as oh, never mind. That's good. So I'm going to factor out this 16 and see what it leaves me with. So this divided by 16 is 289. And then we have that minus 16 divided by 16 is 1. And then we still have this t squared. So I just write t squared. Remember, whenever you have something times something equal to 0, you just set both of those somethings equal to 0. 16 equal to 0 is not going to help you, so that's invalid information. And then we take this and set it equal to 0, okay? We can try to see if there's a number that would be multiplied by itself to square it? And if there is, then we can use our little trick here, right? Where we say a plus b, a minus b. So I'm going to take my calculator and just try numbers. You could try something low first. 6 times 6 we know is 36, so we need to go way higher than that. If we do 10 times 10, that's 100, so even higher than that. You could try 16. So 16 times 16 gives me 256. Or remember, you could do 216. You could hit this squared button right here, or you could hit this button right here and then select the 2. So that's still too low. So now let's try 17. And 17 worked. So we can rewrite this as 17 squared minus t squared equal to 0. So essentially, our 17 is our a, and our t is our b. So now we can rewrite this as 17 plus t and 17 minus t. And that is still equal to 0. So now again, we have something times something equal to 0. So we set both of these something equal to 0. The trick is to look to see what t would have to be to make this 0, and you would take the opposite sign. So here, because this is positive 17, this would be negative 17. And over here, we have 17 minus t. Because this one has a negative, it's actually going to be the same sign already, okay? So 17 minus what would give you 0? That's just 17, okay? Remember, time is seconds, and there's no such thing as negative seconds, so we have to throw that one out too. So the final answer would be 17 seconds. Alrighty. And then for the last one, we actually already did this in the problem above. So you notice here we factored out that 16, right? So I'm going to do that again. And we got 289 minus t squared, right? I'm going to just keep bringing this 16 down. And we were able to rewrite this using our a squared minus b squared as 17 plus t and 17 minus t. So this entire thing would be the factored form.